This right here is my Seka Spear. I've had it for a good few months now, and it's a bike that I really like. I have done a full review on it, so if you want to check out that review, I'm gonna have that linked in the description down below. But one thing I did say when I bought this bike was, I'm gonna compare this directly to a Specialized Tarmac SL8. Now, the reason why I'm going to do it against that bike is because I think really it's its main competitor, and realistically on all of their advertising and testing and stuff, that's the bike that they have compared themselves to. So I think it's only fair to judge it against that. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you do know that I have reviewed the SL8, again link in description below, and of course I've been riding the Tarmac SL7 for 5 years now, so I think I know that bike inside and out, and the SL8 and the SL7 are very similar. This video is going to work how most of my bike reviews work, so I've got 10 different categories that I judge the bike on, and I'm going to compare this directly with the SL8. So, chapters are always below, let's get into it. Let's kick it off with handling. This is going to be my longest category, so of course you can always skip ahead, but I feel like I have a lot to say here. So when I first got on this bike, I was expecting it to have a very similar handling sensation to the Tarmac SL8, and actually that ended up not being the case. The way that I like to describe it, the Tarmac series, when you're sitting on the bike actually likes to move underneath you, so you seem to stay very upright, and the bike it moves underneath you in a way that some people might make it feel like it's less stable and less direct. But once you get used to it, actually it's a really nice sensation, and it makes the bike feel like it works with you more. The Seka Spear, on the other hand, is more like the traditional bike where you sit on top of the bike and the bike likes to be very direct and upright, and you kind of move on top of the bike. And I can only akin this to the ride feel of other bikes such as the Factor Ostro Van. It feels very similar to that. The Trek Madone also has this kind of sensation, and it just gives it a very stable sensation when you're riding the bike. Now, which one you like or prefer doesn't really matter. You kind of just get used to either of them in that sense, but they just feel different in that way. Next up, when you're going around the corners, one place I'll give the win to the Seka Spear is when you're changing from left to right, left to right. You know, where you just have to flick the bike really quickly when you're going through like a tight chicane, for example. This is one area where the Seka Spear really flips nicely from one side to the other. It's very quick, and it catches you in this lovely position to hit the next corner, and it flips, catches you in a lovely position again to rail the next corner again. So actually in terms of initial turning and flick on the bike, I think the Seka Spear actually wins in this one. However, for most normal turns, I think, to me, the Specialized Tarmac still feels a little bit more precise. It's still a little bit more stable in the corners, and overall inspires a little bit more confidence in the rider to rail the corners. Guys, I am actually being quite nitpicky with this. When I say the SL8 is better in that sense, it really isn't much better. If this is like a 9 out of 10 on all of those things, the Specialized just about makes a 10 out of 10 on those things. So the difference is, this is already a very high bar, the Specialized just sits that very slightly higher in terms of the handling. I think next up, I would like to talk about weight. Now, this bike, the Seka Spear here, is actually a surprisingly light bike. It's a really good frame. This is the size 58 frame, so as big as they go, and it comes in at 845 grams painted. It is the RDC version, so they're kind of like racier, as light as possible version. So I am going to compare it to the S-Works SL8 version. Now I think for a size 58, the S-Works versions usually come in about 750 to 800 grams. So the Tarmac is once again a winner here in the weight category. I think their non-S-Works versions, the normal Specialized SL8, they come in about 850 grams. Once again, it's all very dependent on the paint job. But I do know that the forks on those bikes come in lighter, and I don't know about the handlebars, but annoyingly, when I went to go weigh these handlebars, which I'll link in the video below on the build-up, my scales broke, so I don't know how much these weigh. But with that being said, when you are riding the bikes, can you tell a difference in the weight? Not particularly. They are so close together. Really, it's going to depend on which groups that you buy and which wheels you put on it, and which tires you put on it, and stuff like that. Like, they're going to have a bigger factor on the weight than they are on the actual frame, comparing these two. So Specialized wins again, but only just again. Okay, sprinting. I usually like to talk about the sprinting in these reviews because they kind of show a flexi bike. When you start to put more power out, you can start to feel a bit more weaknesses in the frames. And I feel like maybe I might feel it more because I ride bigger frames, so there's more carbon there to show the weaknesses. Maybe there's less effect on smaller frames. But let's get into it. I'm going to start with the Seka Spear here, and the sprinting it's very, very good. So I always like to say, like, when a bottom bracket and a rear triangle is too stiff, the bike almost feels a little bit wooden and it doesn't feel quite as exciting. I actually like the frame to flex a little bit and then whip back and flex a little bit and whip back. And this bike has that. It kind of makes the bike feel a little bit snappier and sharper every time you put your foot down. It kind of whips back and almost feels like you're getting this extra kick of propulsion. And this bike definitely has that, but so does the Specialized. And I would say arguably the Specialized is even better than this for that kind of sensation and feeling on the bike. And the reason why the Specialized is going to win here, once again, it's only just, but when you're getting over 1400 watts on this thing, that whip back on the flex of the frame doesn't feel like it's happening as quickly. Whereas I feel like I can happily get over 1500 watts on the Specialized and the bike still has that whip and snap back. Whereas yeah, this starts to, maybe it's getting a little bit too flexy. And actually, I think a lot of that comes from the top tube here, because as you start to push harder and harder, you start to pull on the handlebars more and more and more. And the Specialized has a much wider top tube. This one, well, it's extraordinarily skinny, which is nice. But when you're putting the power down, you can feel the flex through the top tube on this bike. So again, the SL8 has to win this category. Climbing. Watch about when you're in the mountains and you're doing those big long climbs or even the short snappy ones. And I'm gonna say it's about even here. So usually when a bike sprints really well, you have that same kind of snappy, fun acceleration sensation when you're out the saddle going up climbs. And yeah, that definitely works for this bike too. But because you're not doing those like big, like 1500 watt power outputs when you're going up the climbs, you know, usually like a big effort or a sharp pull around a hairpin that I would normally do, I'll probably get to like 600, 750 at most maybe. So you're still well below that kind of like flex feeling that you get in the frame. So in my opinion, both the SL8 and the Seka Spear work equally well here. They're both just really fun and exciting when going up the climbs. When you're in the saddle, after like 2 minutes, doesn't really matter what bike you're on climbing, they all feel kind of the same. Because the weight difference as well is also so close, probably between the whole frame set, there might be like 100 grams difference. You can't really feel that when you're climbing. So yeah, even Stevens. Okay, comfort. What's more comfortable, the SL8 or the Seka Spear? And it's another easy win for the Specialized Tarmac, to be honest. It is one of the best race bikes I've ever ridden for comfort. Even to this day, out of all the things on my list, no bike has come close to it. I genuinely think that the SL8 rides as comfortably as an endurance bike. It's unbelievable, but it's one of the things that Specialized has nailed down. And it goes for the SL7 that I've been riding for a very long time too. Unbelievable comfort on those bikes. So how does this bike fare compared to it? And I must say, this is where one of those things where it doesn't quite get close to the SL8. Now, this bike for a race bike or an all-rounder bike, which I like to call it, because it is like a climber with lots of aero features, it does generally really well. The back end, this wind eye, I think it works well to add flex and compliance into this frame. So on the bum end, the bike is pretty damn comfortable, but you can still feel more buzz coming through the frame. Even with this like unbelievably skinny seat post that it's got here, it just feels like you get a bit more vibration coming through. The front, however, doesn't live up anywhere close to the SL8. It is really harsh when you do hit stuff coming through here. Not enough to make you stop. It's not like a Canyon Air Road where your upper body gets absolutely battered. Like, I can still spend all day on this thing. I'd say it's more similar to a Pinarello, where it's got a lot of feedback coming through the frame, but it's not as jolty as a Canyonero. The shock doesn't come through and into your bones, but you can feel a lot going on the front end there. So yeah, still fine for all day riding, but not quite that really lovely smooth road feel that you want from the front end here. Flats and rolling. Essentially, speed, is it fast? And this one, I really can't tell a difference between the two bikes. On the flats and the rolling, they both feel like they're aerodynamically fast bikes. Like, I can hold 40 k's an hour along a flat road fairly comfortably on these bikes. You know, you're always going to be pushing a fair amount of watts to hold 40 k's an hour. But these feel like they're up there with the competition, and I can't tell the difference between the two. When I go on like the long descents of Mallorca and stuff and the big downhills, again, I seem to be hitting like the exact same top speed, so I really can't differentiate between the two. And finally, in their white paper, they literally took this bike to the wind tunnel to aerodynamically compete with the SL8. And, you know, they kind of said they're like, oh, we're 2 or 3 watts faster. But of course, you can always fudge the numbers, massage the numbers a little bit to make your bike seem a little bit quicker. But realistically, in the real world, I can imagine they're probably the exact same speed. Okay, that gets us into the final few categories, and the next one is fun factor. Is one bike more fun to ride than the other? And this is going to be another one of those no's. They're both the same, really. In my score sheet, they both get 10 out of 10. And I think part of the reason is that because they do that, they are like an all-rounder, the one bike to rule them all kind of thing. It doesn't really matter where you go on them. They handle every situation perfectly. Someone in the group ride starts to pick up the speed and all of a sudden you're doing a train. Aerodynamically, this thing holds its speed. You're having a great time. When you're going for a sprint, when you're getting out the saddle to go around a hairpin, it feels snappy, it feels sharp, it feels fun. And you know, when you're doing those long climbs, the bike feels light because they are light. So between this and the SL8, fun-wise, you're going to have a 10 out of 10 time on both of them, in my opinion. The next one is that shop window factor. Do you look at yourself in the shops as you ride past because you think your bike looks cool? Or, you know, do you love to like stare and look at the bike if you go into a shop? Now, this category, of course, is the most subjective here. And for the SL8, when you cover the nose on the SL8, the rest of the bike down, it's actually a very pretty bike. All the tube shapes look traditional, but well designed and uniquely aero. And as a whole, it does look really good. The only downside is that you either have to buy the 56 or the 54 frame because the front nose of the SL8, there's no getting around it. It's ugly. It's hella ugly. And especially as you get to those bigger sizes, like the 58, that nose on the tarmac on the 58 frame, it looks terrible. And there's no getting around that. Well, to be honest, when I compare it to the Seka Spear here, the Seka Spear as a whole on that front nose area arguably looks better, but it's also boring, to be honest, on the front end. For these bikes, the interesting bits are towards the back, and I literally love the wind eye on this section. I mean, to be honest, I think it might be half the reason I bought the bike. And you know what? You see the Specialized Tarmac literally everywhere. And when you show up on one of these, everyone has a look at it just because it's different. No one's seen it before. And well, especially in the UK, there really are not many of them hanging around. So which one do I think looks better? To be honest, I'm going for this one, Seka Spear. And that brings me on to my final category, and this one is, of course, is personal again. Cost. Value for money. Which brand gives you more? Now, the Seka Spear frame with the handlebars comes in at £2,600 here in the UK. And you do get to choose the width and the stem length of your handlebars. You get to choose the seat back on your seat post. So it's fairly customizable. But after previously buying a Specialized, if you buy through a dealer, they will change all of that anyway for you. So at the moment as well, the SL8 frames are about £1,000 off. They're normally a £5,000 frame. They're currently sitting at £4,000, which is still a 1,400 quid difference. And you don't get a handlebar with it. You might ask, you might get better shop service with the Specialized, but Seka, to buy Seka, you have to go through a dealer as well. And from my experience, I've been fairly well looked after from that. So I can imagine if there's any major problems, warranty stuff, it would be easy just to go back to the shop with the Seka Spear as well. I'm going to conclude the cost in the conclusion sections here, and effectively I'm going to say, here's the honest truth of it. If you can afford an SL8, I would probably buy the SL8. It's more comfortable, it just does most things a tiny bit better, which all add up to a better feeling, more well put together bike. Their warranties are probably better, the shop probably looks after you a little bit better, and yeah, I just think the bike does ride better as a whole. I just think it's a better bike. If money is a really big constraint, like a really big limiting factor, then I probably would go with this guy, you know? You want something different, you want something that no one's seen before, and no one else is riding. And then finally, you also know what components and how to build up a bike, like you know all the little things that you want to buy, then I can advise a Seka Spear. I will be riding it for definitely another year or two, and I'm not displeased with that whatsoever. Like, I'm looking forward to those next couple of years on this bike. But yeah, the honest truth is, as a whole, the SL8 is still better. Guys, if you have any opinions or anything you want to pitch in, feel free to chuck them in the comments down below. Or if you have any questions and stuff that you think I have missed in the comparison, again, I reply to most things, so chuck them down below. You can also find me privately on Instagram over here, where you can also message me as well. Again, reply to most things. Or you just want to follow my daily shenanigans. But I've been Jason, this has been Cycling Unboxed. See you in another video.